The relentless hunt. The night was dark and heavy with silence. Only the sound of wind moved between the tall alien trees. The small warrior crouched low, her eyes glowing faint in the moonlight. Her breathing was slow and careful. Like a shadow moving with purpose, she was hunting. And her prey was the most dangerous creature her people had ever named. A human. Her tribe had told her countless stories about this beast. Humans were not large, not armored, not covered in claws. Yet they were feared more than any war animal. They were called Death Worlders, predators born from a cursed planet where everything tried to kill them. She had been trained since childhood to fight. But tonight her test was different. She was to follow the lone human soldier. She was to bring back proof that even he could bleed. The ground was marked with prints. Boot marks pressed deep into the soft soil. He moved strong yet tired. She could read his trail like a book. She saw where he stopped, where he bent to drink, where he climbed rocks. Each sign told her he was close. Her lips curled into a smile. Soon, she thought, very soon, the forest around her was silent. Even the night birds stayed quiet when the human walked. That silence made her cautious. Her spear was tight in her hands. She imagined the moment her weapon would pierce his back. The cheers of her tribe filled her mind. They would call her a true hunter. They would call her the one who killed the human. But as she crept closer, she began to notice strange things. The human was not acting like the monster she had been told of. He did not set traps for prey. He did not feast on animals. Instead, he gathered pieces of fallen wood. He cut strips of bark. He carried bundles of grass, all of it tied together with care. She tilted her head, confused. What was he doing? Hours passed. The cold of night deepened. Her breath turned white in the air. Still, she watched him. The human built a fire, but it was small, not for cooking meat. He warmed his hands only for a short while. Then he went back to his strange work. He bent over the pile of grass, wood, and cloth. His hands moved slow but steady. He was making something, but what? Her tail flicked in irritation. Was this some kind of human trick? Maybe he was building a weapon she did not know. Maybe he was preparing poison or a strange trap. She narrowed her eyes. Her heart told her to strike now. But her mind whispered to wait. Patience was the heart of the hunt. The human finally stopped moving. He leaned back, wiping sweat from his forehead. The firelight revealed his face, tired, scarred but calm. Not the face of a monster. Not the face of a killer drunk with blood. He looked almost gentle. The alien warrior's chest tightened. This was not what she had been promised. She forced herself to remember. Her people said humans were liars. They pretended to be weak. They pretended to be kind. And when you trusted them, they showed their true teeth. She gripped her spear harder. Yes, she thought. That must be it. He is pretending. The moon began to fall low. Cold air bit her skin, even through her armor. She shivered. Her body wanted warmth, but she refused. She would not show weakness in front of her prey. Still, her knees trembled as she crouched. Her eyes locked on the strange pile he had built. It was shaped like a covering, something to wrap around the body. It almost looked like a blanket. The thought struck her heart like a spear. Why would a human waste his time on such a thing? No warrior of her clan would waste days to build comfort. No hunter would care for the weak. Yet here was a predator, sitting by the fire, making warmth for someone unseen. She blinked. She almost wanted to step closer. Almost wanted to ask why, but she swallowed her breath and stayed hidden. Her orders were clear: watch, wait, kill, and yet, as the fire cracked and the human leaned back against the tree, she felt something strange, not hate, not fear. Something else, a question: who was hunting who? Was she the predator? Or was she the one being lured into his silent world? Her heart beat fast in her chest. This hunt was no longer simple. It was no longer just a test of skill. Something was wrong. Or perhaps something was different, and she was about to find out what. Strange behavior. The night turned colder as the alien warrior stayed hidden among the roots of a twisted tree. Her eyes never left the human. He had not moved like a predator. Not once. Instead of sharpening weapons, instead of setting traps, he bent over his strange project. Every movement of his hands was slow, patient, and careful. It was wrong. It was against everything she had learned about humans. She remembered the words of her elder. Humans will break you with fire. With steel, with their endless hunger. Do not trust their hands. Do not trust their eyes. If they look calm, it is because they plan to strike. Those words echoed inside her mind, and yet, this human soldier looked nothing like the nightmare. He was building, not destroying. He was crafting, not killing. Hours passed, and her sharp eyes studied every detail. He tore strips of cloth from his own uniform. He braided grass like her people did for ropes. He stitched pieces together with a needle he carried from his pack. The fire burned low, casting shadows across his face. There was no bloodlust there, only determination, but determination for what? Her fingers tightened around her spear. Her tail curled with frustration. This was no hunt anymore, this was confusion. The human should have been dangerous, terrifying, but his silence was more frightening than any roar. He was not weak, she could feel that. There was power in his every step, but he was choosing not to use it. That made her uneasy. Why hold back when he knew an enemy stalked him? Unless he already knew she was there. The thought pierced her like ice. Her ears twitched, her eyes darted to his movements again. Had he seen her? Had he sensed her already? Humans were said to be monsters of instinct. Some claimed they could smell fear. Some claimed they could hear the beating of a heart through the silence. She held her breath, her chest tight with sudden dread. The human paused. He looked around slowly, his eyes scanned the trees, the rocks, the shadows. For a terrifying moment, she thought his gaze landed directly on her. Her body froze like stone, not a twitch, not a sound. Only her racing heartbeat thundered in her ears. But the human said nothing. He only sighed and went back to his strange task. The blanket, yes, it was clear now. He was weaving together a blanket, piece by piece, layer by layer. Soft moss stitched with cloth, leaves tucked carefully for insulation. It was not a weapon, it was not a trap, it was protection. But for who? The alien's mind twisted in circles. Why would a predator waste time on warmth? Why would he create something so gentle in a place of war? Her people never spoke of this. They spoke of firebombs. They spoke of steel ships tearing through the sky. They spoke of humans who fought until their last breath. Never had she heard of one who stopped to build comfort. This was a new kind of danger. A danger to her certainty. To everything she believed, the cold gnawed at her bones. Her breath came out in sharp mist. She hugged herself to keep still, but the more she shivered, the more she noticed the human watching the fire, not for himself, but as if waiting for someone else to take the warmth. Her lips trembled. Was the blanket for her? The thought was impossible, it made no sense, and yet the fire between them seemed to whisper it. She bit her lip. Her claws scraped against the wood of her spear. The urge to leap, to end this confusion with one strike, grew stronger. One stab would prove the story's true. One strike would silence her doubts, but her arm refused to move. Because in the silence of the forest, she realized the human was not guarding himself. He was guarding the blanket. Why would he do that? Who would he be protecting? Not his tribe, not his army. He was alone, not himself. Then who? Her sharp eyes caught a flicker. The human lifted the half-finished blanket and pressed it against his chest. For a moment he looked up at the stars. His lips moved, not in rage, not in war cry, but in whisper. A prayer maybe, or a promise. The sound was too faint for her to hear, but the look in his eyes was clear. It was not hate, it was sorrow, it was care. It was something her kind had never spoken of, something she did not understand. Her body tensed, her mind screamed to retreat. This was no longer the hunt she was prepared for. This was something greater, something heavier. But her feet would not move. She was trapped not by his weapons, but by the mystery he carried, and in that moment, she understood the real danger, not the spear in her hand, not the prey before her. The danger was the answer to one question. If this human was not the monster of her people's stories, then what was he? The fire popped, sending sparks into the cold night. The human looked up once more, and for the first time, the alien warrior felt a shiver, not from the cold, but from the truth she could not yet face. This hunt was changing her, and there was no way back. The moment of weakness. The alien warrior had never known such confusion. For 2 nights she had tracked the human without rest. Her people said humans never slept, that they could march for days. But she had not expected herself to be the one growing weak first. The cold was merciless, frost spread across the rocks. Glittering under the pale moons, her limbs grew stiff. Her claws shook against the spear shaft. She cursed under her breath. How could a proud hunter of her tribe shiver like prey? While the human still worked with steady hands, she pressed herself against a tree trunk. Her sharp eyes watched him bend over the fire again. He added more branches, careful not to let the flames grow too high. Always controlled, always deliberate. It was as if he knew the forest was full of watching eyes. as if he was preparing not for himself, but for whoever was hidden in the shadows. Her breath caught in her throat. Did he know? Did he already see her? Her mind screamed that this was the trap the elders had warned. Humans pretend to be kind until you lower your guard. And yet, no matter how much she tried to believe those words, her body betrayed her. It leaned closer. It craved the warmth of that fire. It craved the softness of that half-finished blanket. Her legs trembled. The warrior's body finally failed her pride. A wave of weakness struck. Her knees gave way. She stumbled against the roots, snapping a dry twig beneath her weight. The sound cracked through the silence like thunder. The human's head turned instantly, his eyes sharpened. Searching the dark, her blood froze. This was it. He would strike. He would reveal the predator beneath the calm mask. She clutched her spear and prepared to leap. But what he did instead broke every rule of her world. The human did not draw his weapon. He did not roar. He did not even stand to chase her. Instead, he lifted the blanket in his hands, slowly, almost gently. He carried it a few steps away from the fire, and then he laid it on a smooth rock. He placed it there like an offering, like a silent gift left for an unseen guest. The alien warrior's heart pounded against her chest. Her breath came fast, turning to mist in the freezing air. What was this? Was this a trick? Was this some strange human game to lure her closer? Her instincts screamed to run, but her eyes locked on the blanket, the stitches, the fabric, the moss carefully layered for warmth. Every part of it whispered the same truth. It had been made for her. Her hand shook on the spear. She wanted to believe it was poison. She wanted to believe it was bait. But the cold sinking into her bones told another story. This was survival, and the human, her prey, her enemy, was giving her the means to survive. She crouched lower. Her sharp hearing caught the faint sound of his voice. The human spoke softly into the night. His words were in a tongue she could not understand, but the tone was not one of anger, not one of victory. It was sorrow. A quiet mourning carried into the sky. Her chest ached. She remembered how her tribe laughed when she volunteered for this hunt. They told her humans were beasts. They told her she would never return if she made a mistake. But here in this cold forest, she realized the greatest danger was not his strength. It was the truth of his silence, the truth that humans were not what they had been painted to be. Her tail lashed once, uncertain. Should she strike him now while his back was turned? The spear was ready. One leap and her people would call her a hero. One strike and her name would be sung for generations. But the blanket glowed softly in the firelight, and she knew, if she killed him now, she would never know why he had chosen to protect her instead of himself. The fire snapped, sparks rising into the night. The human leaned back against the tree, closing his eyes for the first time, not in full sleep, never careless, but in a soldier's rest, even tired. He kept one hand near his weapon. Yet it was the other hand, the one that had made the blanket, that held her attention. The warrior's body shook, not from fear, not from hunger, but from the storm inside her. Everything she had been told, everything she had believed, was crumbling before her eyes. The night wind howled through the trees, and for the first time in her life, she no longer knew who the predator was and who the prey truly was. The shocking truth. The blanket lay on the rock like a silent question. The fire's glow touched its edges, making it look warmer than the air itself. The alien warrior's eyes never left it. Her spear was still tight in her grip, yet her heart beat in a rhythm she did not understand. All her life she had been told humans were destroyers. They did not build comfort, they only built weapons. They did not protect the weak, they crushed them. Her people's stories were painted with blood and ash whenever humans were spoken of. And yet here was one, alone, tired, scarred, offering warmth instead of war. Her body trembled, part from cold, part from confusion. She wanted to lunge forward and end the mystery with one strike, but something stronger held her back. The blanket was no trap. She could see every stitch, every fold. It had been made with patience, not with malice. And patience was not the weapon of a beast. It was the act of someone who cared. Slowly, she inched closer through the shadows. Her claws scraped lightly against the frozen earth. Each sound felt like thunder in the silence. The human did not move. He sat near the fire, eyes closed, his body resting but never fully relaxed, one hand near his weapon, the other resting on his knee, palm open as if showing he held no threat. Her chest tightened. Why would he leave himself vulnerable? Why leave a gift for an enemy unless he did not see her as enemy at all? The thought stabbed her deeper than any blade. Could it be true? Had this human known all along that she was there? Had he been protecting her instead of himself? Her throat felt dry. Memories rushed through her mind. The first time she held a spear as a child, the chants of her tribe as they spoke of humans as nightmares, the pride in her elders' eyes when she vowed to hunt one. All of it felt weak now, shadows compared to the fire burning before her. She stepped closer. The warmth of the fire brushed her skin. The blanket was within reach now. Her claws trembled as she touched it, soft, warmer than anything she had ever carried on a hunt. For a moment she closed her eyes, and in that moment, she imagined the human's hands working tirelessly through the night, threading each fiber, weaving each layer not for himself, but for someone else, for her. Her chest burned with something unfamiliar. Not hatred, not rage, but something gentler, something dangerous in a new way. She could no longer lie to herself. The shocking truth was simple. The human was not protecting his own life. He was protecting hers. Her knees weakened as the realization struck. The human she had hunted for days had not fought back. He had not attacked. He had not even set a single trap. Instead, he had watched her silently, felt her presence in the shadows, and chose to give instead of take. It was madness, it was impossible, and yet it was real. The fire crackled, throwing sparks into the dark sky. The human stirred slightly, opening his eyes. For the first time their gazes met directly. No shadows between them, no lies. His eyes were tired but steady. Not cruel, not mocking, only calm, only certain. As if he knew she was never his enemy. As if he had trusted her long before she trusted him. Her spear shook in her hand. This was her moment. Strike now and her tribe would call her glorious. Strike now and her people would sing her name. But the weight of the blanket around her claws was heavier than her spear. It carried more power than victory ever could. Because it carried the truth her people had hidden, the truth that a human could care. Her tail lashed, her breath sharp. She felt her world tearing apart. If she returned with this story, no one would believe her. If she spared him, she would be shamed. If she killed him, she would be a liar to her own heart. The choice stabbed at her. Every path burned, but only one felt alive. The human did not move, he only watched, waiting. Not for mercy, not for death, but for her choice, for her truth. The alien warrior lowered her spear. Not fully, not in surrender, but in confusion, her voice, rough from cold and silence, whispered a single word, "Why?" The human did not answer. He only turned his gaze back to the fire. The silence between them spoke louder than words. And in that silence, the alien warrior realized her hunt was over. Not because she had won, but because the human had never been her enemy. The unexpected bond. The fire burned low, casting long shadows that danced across the clearing. The alien warrior stood frozen, the blanket still trembling in her claws. Her spear was heavy, her pride heavier, and yet neither felt stronger than the truth pressing against her chest. For days she had hunted him. She had tracked his every step. She had believed her stories, her people, her pride. But the human had done none of the things she feared. He had not raised his weapon, he had not hunted her. Instead, he had built this. A gift, a shield, a silent kindness that shattered everything she thought she knew. The human looked at her once more. His eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. They were not cruel, not sharp like the blades of war. They were steady, patient. The eyes of someone who had already made his choice. Someone who had chosen not to fight her. Even when he could have, her throat was tight. The warrior in her screamed that this was weakness, that sparing him would shame her forever, that no one would believe her story. But another voice, small and quiet, rose inside her. It whispered that this was not weakness, it was strength of another kind. A strength she had never been taught. Slowly, her claws loosened around the spear. The weapon dropped to her side, her body shook, not from fear, but from the weight of her decision. She stepped closer to the fire. The blanket wrapped around her shoulders now. The warmth seeped into her bones. And for the first time in many nights, she did not feel the bite of cold. The human did not move. He did not smile. He did not speak. But the flicker in his eyes showed he understood. He shifted slightly, making space beside the fire. It was not an order, it was an invitation. Her heart thundered, every instinct warned her not to trust. And yet her body betrayed her again. She sat across from him. The blanket still pulled tight around her. The firelight painted their faces in golden shadow. Hunter and prey side by side, neither striking, neither running for a long time. There was only silence, and in that silence, something unspoken was built. A bond made not from words but from choices, from trust, from survival. The warrior stared at him, at his scarred hands, at the calm lines of his face. She wondered what he had lost, why he had looked at the stars with such sorrow, why he had spent days crafting warmth for an enemy. The questions burned in her, but she could not ask them. Not yet. The truth was too new, too fragile, like a flame that could be crushed by one careless breath. The human finally spoke, his voice low and rough from the cold. She could not understand the words, but she understood the tone. It was not threat, it was not command, it was something else, something her people had no word for, but she felt it deep in her chest. It was care. Her eyes lowered. For the first time she felt shame, not because she had failed the hunt, but because she had believed the lies, because she had thought of him only as prey when all along he had thought of her as something worth protecting. The fire crackled. The night deepened, and the forest around them seemed to breathe easier. Two enemies had sat by the same flame, and no blood had fallen. That was a kind of victory her people would never understand. But she did, now she did, she whispered again, her voice almost breaking. Why? The human did not answer with words. He only pushed the firewood closer, feeding the flame so it would not die, and somehow that was answer enough. The alien warrior pulled the blanket tighter around herself. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if her tribe would hunt her for sparing him, or if his people would rise again with fire and steel. But tonight, in this circle of light, she was no hunter and he was no prey. They were only two souls who had chosen not to kill. Two souls who had chosen to protect. The bond was small, fragile, but it was real, and sometimes that was enough to change everything.